Whiskey Tango Foxtrot is the Virality Project. More to the point, Whiskey Tango Foxtrot to the people running it think they are. And who do they think we are? Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is another Declaration of Truth from your host, Terry A. Hurlbut. On St. Patrick's Day, Matt Taibbi ruffled more feathers in the leftist community of which he was once a part. Whether he still is, only he can answer that. He and his colleague Mike Schellenberger. This much I can say. The leaders of that community have lied to him, and he is calling them out. The current case in point is Stanford University's Virality Project, which he has made the subject of Twitter Files 19. Before I get into it, I do want to shout out to the prime sponsor of this channel, which is Conservative News and Views. Link in the description. Be sure to check out the awesome CNAV Store. Scroll down near the bottom for that link. Lots of great merchandise there, especially this t-shirt that I've chosen for today, which quotes Aldous Huxley as saying, "Facts do not cease to exist because they are ignored." And what do we have here? We have a project that deliberately sought not only to ignore but to suppress key facts in the service of a narrative founded on greed and arrogance, which, as I intend to show, are the very roots of the Virality Project. One more thing. If you like what you're about to hear, you can like this video. You can also click the bell icon to get a notice every time I come out with a new one. In fact, do you see the new icon, the heart shape with the US dollar sign in it? That's the super thanks icon. If you really want to keep these videos coming, click that and leave me a tip. Any currency will do, so long as it's legal tender. Now, any of you remember a movie titled Wall Street? Directed by Oliver Stone, co-written by Oliver Stone, and starring Michael Douglas and Charlie Sheen. 20th Century Fox, as it was then known, released it in 1987. I'm going to start with this line by Michael Douglas as corporate raider Gordon Gekko. Greed, for lack of a better term, is good. Greed works. Now, what is this to do with the Virality Project? Stick with me, because it illustrates the real roots of the project. To understand the project, you must know its roots. They begin with an outfit called Freeman, Spogli and Company. And to Ambassador Spogli, I hope I haven't mangled your name. I guessed how to pronounce it from the name of Vince Bugliosi, another famous resident of California. If I've mangled your name, please leave me a comment. Now, that firm is a private equity firm that does leveraged buyouts and recapitalizations of American consumer goods and distribution companies. Students of the Roaring '80s actually remember it as Reardon, Freeman, and Spogli. The Reardon is Richard Reardon, who later became mayor of Los Angeles. They are, in point of fact, the Gordon Gekkos in that investment sector. What Drexel Burnham was to high-yield, low-quality commercial paper, Reardon, Freeman, and Spogli were to middle-market mergers and acquisitions. This firm helped Malone and Hyde buy out Piggly Wiggly stores, to cite one example. In 1987, the same year that movie came out, Messrs. Freeman and Spogli gave Stanford University $50 million to found the Freeman Spogli Institute for International Studies. Mr. Spogli went on to become the U.S. ambassador to Italy. That institute, with Stanford Law School, founded the Stanford Cyber Policy Institute. They, in turn, founded the Standard Internet Observatory, not the telescope kind, which has been mentioned before in the Twitter Files. And from the Stanford Internet Observatory came, drum roll please, the Virality Project. We can now describe the Virality Project rooted in greed, vanity, and monumental arrogance. The Virality Project has only a little to do with internet memes going viral. Rather, it has to do with the virus that shall remain nameless, and the acceptance of so-called immunizations against same. I have links in the description from Stanford University, the Rockefeller Foundation, and the project itself, where you can read what they are about. From the Stanford link comes this list of the collaborators with the Virality Project. Quote, in January 2020, the Stanford Internet Observatory expanded this project in collaboration with colleagues at New York University, the University of Washington, the National Council on Citizenship, and Graphica with a K. Close quote. The Rockefeller Foundation provided moral support by hosting a webinar and inviting Virality Project directors to speak. On February 24, 2022, the Virality Project issued its final report titled, and I kid you not, Memes, Magnets, and Microchips, Narrative Dynamics Around, well, just what I was talking about. The very title drips with contempt for the common people. Basically, for anyone who didn't go to medical school and any doctor who asked the slightest question about these preparations. I have a link in the description to the download landing page for that report, but I have to warn you, that report carries the Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Non-Derivative 4.0 International License. If CNAV were to host that directly, the license wouldn't allow it. In any case, I am not going to play their games. I reserve the right to criticize the Virality Project and its report as its falsehoods and the real situation required. Obviously, Project Administration, the Stanford Internet Observatory, and the Freeman Spogli Institute are very sensitive about the use of this report by any possible critics. With their associations, I think you can readily appreciate the source of the arrogance that pervades their self-description. The executive summary of that report reeks with belittling comments about all who disagree with them. It also lists some other usual Twitter file suspects, like the Digital Forensics Research Laboratory, and an unusual suspect, the National Council on Citizenship. Well, apart from the obvious Whiskey Tango Foxtrot style question, only their cowardice, hiding as they do behind a non-commercial, non-derivative license, matches their arrogance. An unfazed Matt Taibbi released a thread showing the relationship of the Virality Project to Twitter. As ever, I have links in the description to the odd numbers, beginning with the anchor tweet. So, here we go. Twitter Files 19. The Great Lie Machine Around the Virus That Shall Remain Nameless. Stanford, the Virality Project, and the Censorship of True Stories. Quotes. The release of Dr. Anthony Fauci's spring 2020 emails has been used to exasperate distrusted Dr. Fauci. Close quote. And another quote. Increased distrust in Fauci's expert guidance. And another one. Reports of jabbed individuals contracting that virus anyway. Natural immunity. Suggesting the virus leaked from a lab. Even worrisome jokes. All of these were characterized as potential violations or disinformation events by the Virality Project, a sweeping cross-platform effort to monitor billions of social media posts by Stanford University, federal agencies, and a slew of often state-funded non-governmental organizations. Just before Mike Schellenberger and I, Matt Taibbi, testified in the House last week, Virality Project emails were found in the Twitter files describing stories of true immunization side effects as actionable content. We've since learned the Virality Project in 2021 worked with government to launch a pan-industry monitoring plan for content related to the virus that shall remain nameless. At least 6 major internet platforms were onboarded to the same JIRA ticketing system, daily sending millions of items for review. Head scratch alert, what's a JIRA? JIRA is not a letter word nor an acronym. It is the trademark nickname for Java-based reporting software by a firm called Atlassian. Atlassian. Moving on. Though the Virality Project reviewed content on a mass scale for Twitter, Google and YouTube, Facebook and Instagram, Medium, TikTok and Pinterest, it knowingly targeted true material and legitimate political opinion, while often being factually wrong itself. This story is important for two reasons. One, as Orwellian proof of concept, the Virality Project was a smash success. Government, academia, and an oligopoly of would-be corporate competitors organized quickly behind a secret, unified effort to control political messaging. Two, it accelerated the evolution of digital censorship, moving it from judging truth versus untruth to a new, scarier model, openly focused on political narrative at the expense of fact. The beginning, on February 5th, 2021, just after Joe Biden took office, Stanford wrote to Twitter to discuss the Virality Project. By the 17th, Twitter agreed to join and got its first weekly report on anti-jab disinformation, which contained numerous true stories. February 22nd, 2021. Stanford welcomed Twitter veterans like Yoel Roth and Brian Clark, instructing them on how to join the group JIRA system. You can watch the friendly welcome video here. And here Mr. Tybee embeds it. March 2nd, 2021. We are beginning to ramp up our notification process to platforms. In addition to the top 7 platforms, VP soon gained visibility to alternative platforms like Gab, Parler, Telegram, and Getter. Near total surveillance of the social media landscape. Through July of 2020, Twitter's internal guidance on the virus that shall remain nameless required a story be demonstrably false or contain an assertion of fact to be actionable. But the Virality Project, in partnership with the CDC, pushed different standards. VP told Twitter that true stories that could fuel hesitancy, including things like celebrity deaths after the jab, or the closure of a central New York school due to reports of post-jab illness, should be considered standard jab misinformation on your platform. In one email to Twitter, VP addressed what it called the jab passport narrative, saying concerns over such programs have driven a larger anti-jab narrative about the loss of rights and freedoms. This was framed as a misinformation event. Let's take a break here because I want to shout out to a sponsor who can really help you through the economic storms to come. That sponsor is oursilverlines.com. Do you feel like you're working harder for your money just to get by? You are not alone. The fluctuating economy, employment issues, unexpected changes in life have left many families struggling over the past few years. Collecting gold and silver can help shield you against many of these challenges. But if you're like me many years ago, you don't know where or how to start. Our Silver Lines helps by connecting you with thousands of members who are learning the secrets to creating and protecting true wealth by collecting precious metals. Whether you just want to collect rare and unique coins or take advantage of the business opportunities this company provides, either way, they can help you learn to live an exceptional life. Visit oursilverlines.com to learn how you can build a legacy to your future. Now, getting back to the thread. VP routinely framed real testimonials about side effects as misinformation, from true stories of blood clots from AstraZeneca's preparations to a New York Times story about jab recipients who contracted the blood disorder thrombocytopenia. By March of 2021, Twitter personnel were aping VP language, describing campaigns against jab passports, fear of mandatory immunizations, and misuse of official reporting tools as potential violations. This echoed a report to Twitter by the Global Engagement Center, the GEC, Russia-linked accounts. While this account posts legitimate and accurate virus updates, it posts content that attacks Italian politicians, the European Union, and the United States. That same GEC report, found in the Twitter files, identified former Italian Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte and former Italian Democratic Party Secretary Nicola Zingaretti, who's been compared to Bernie Sanders, as highly connected accounts in a Russia-linked network. Russia. Oh. The Virality Project helped pioneer the gauging of disinformation by audience response. If the post-jab death of a black woman named Doreen Keyes in Virginia went unnoticed but inspired mostly anti-jab comments on local media, it became a disinformation event. VP warned against people just asking questions, implying it was a tactic commonly used by spreaders of misinformation. It also described a worldwide rally for freedom planned over Telegram as a disinformation event. It encouraged platforms to target people, not posts, using Minority Report style pre-crime logic. That was a real movie. It came out in 2022. Eddie Muller at TCM ought to preserve a copy in his Film Noir Foundation. Gives me chills even to think about that movie. Let's move on. Describing repeat offenders like Robert F. Kennedy Jr., it spoke of a large volume of content that is almost always reportable. VP was repeatedly, extravagantly wrong. In one email to Twitter on misinformation, it spoke of wanting to hone in on an increasingly popular narrative about natural immunity. The VP in April 2021 mistakenly described breakthrough infections as extremely rare events that should not be inferred to mean jabs are ineffective. Later, the CDC changed its methodology for counting cases of the virus that shall remain nameless among people who took the jab, only counting those resulting in hospitalization or death. VP complained that anti-jab accounts, RFK Jr. and what's-her-face, whoever that was, retweeted the story to suggest hypocrisy. A few months later, they sang a different tune. Breakthrough cases are happening. Har-dee, har, har, har. In a chilling irony, the VP ran searches for the term surveillance state. As an unaccountable state-partnered bureaucracy secretly searched it out, the idea that immunizations are part of a surveillance state won its own thought crime bucket. Conspiracy. After about a year, on April 26, 2022, the VP issued a report calling for a rumor control mechanism to address nationally trending narratives and a misinformation and disinformation center of excellence to be housed within CISA at the Department of Homeland Security. The next day, April 27, 2022, DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas announced in a House Appropriations Subcommittee hearing that a disinformation governance board had been created to be headed by the singing censor Nina Jankowicz. Even in its final report, VP claimed it was misinformation to suggest that the jab does not prevent transmission or that governments are planning to introduce jab passports. Both things turned out to be true. The Virality Project was specifically not based on assertions of fact, but public submission to authority, acceptance of narrative, and pronouncements by figures like Anthony Fauci. The project's central and animating concept was, "You can't handle the truth." Apologies to Jack Nicholson. One of its 4 core partners, Pentagon-funded Graphical with a K, explained in a report about Fauci, that's spelled with an X rather than the usual C, that because the public cannot be trusted to make judgments on its own, it must be shielded from truths that might undermine its faith and authority. Quote, this continual process of seeding doubt and uncertainty in authoritative voices, Graphica wrote in a report sent to Twitter, leads to a society that finds it too challenging to identify what's true or false, close quote. For this reason, the CDC-partnered project focused often on disinformation events involving Fauci, saying release of Fauci's emails foments distrust and deriding assertions that he misled the public. A Cleveland Clinic study showed previous infection offered the same immunity as the jab. But VP said discovery was subservient to narrative. Whether or not scientific consensus is changing, natural immunity is a key narrative among anti-jab activists. The Virality Project communications mirror those produced in the recent court case, Louisiana versus Biden, which showed Facebook admitting to the WHO that it too was censoring true content. From the start, Stanford explained the Virality Project would essentially continue the work of its 2020 Election Integrity Partnership. The same JIRA system from the EIP is up and running, they wrote. And in the last Twitter Files thread, we posted a video of EIP Director Alex Stamos describing that project as Stanford trying to fill the gap of things the government couldn't do legally. Hat tip to the Foundation for Freedom Online. We also showed video in which Stamos introduced EIP Research Director Renee DiResta as having worked for the CIA. DiResta in 2021 and 2022 would be listed as a Stanford scholar leading the Virality Project. And I have a link in the description to that video. By October 2020, Stamos was hinting at the direction of the future Virality Project, telling a national cybersecurity conference that the anti-disinformation mission needed a new focus. Quote, we talk way too much about foreign. It's sexy and it's fun, it's a little bit Cold War-y, Stamos said, adding that the vast majority of problems were now domestic. We have like an 80-20 breakdown. I think that needs to be flipped. Close quote. VP's partners, DoD-funded Graphica, the National Science Foundation-funded Center for an Informed Public, the GAC-funded DFR Lab, and the NYU Center for Social Media and Politics, or CISMAP for short. VP would later say that it partnered with several government agencies, including the Office of the Surgeon General and the CDC. It reportedly also worked with DHS's CISA, which means Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, and GAC, among others. To recap, America's information mission went from counterterrorism abroad to stopping foreign interference from reaching domestic audiences to 80% domestic content, much of it true. The Disinformation Governance Board is out, but truth policing is not. Special thanks to Network Effects for hard work on this story, with TechnoFog, Mike Schellenberger, Genevieve Campbell, Sue Schmidt, Aaron Matei, and the Racket News team. Thanks especially to Mike Benz. Search is conducted by a third party. Material may be left out. End of thread. Reaction, as usual with the Twitter Files, is either what did I tell you or why don't you shut up. I have links in the description to a tiny sample. 5 tweets. One user says this whole thing is ridiculous because the Virality Project deceived the public, then presumed to say that people talking about being deceived was misinformation. Another user said he knew when the legacy media started talking about the Delta variant that this was more official fear-mongering to make people run to Big Pharma to save them. This last is important because the Delta and Omicron variants were successfully more transmissible but less virulent, which is exactly how viruses change under microevolutionary pressure. Viruses that kill everyone who catches them die with their victims. Viruses that cause an annoyance but let their victims live survive. Simple as. And with Delta and Omicron, that's what we all saw. The most important criticism I found came in the third tweet. The user said that while authorities were saying, quote, "This is a novel strain and the science is evolving," close quote, to explain an ever-changing narrative, the government, using tactics borrowed from the German Geheimes Staatspolizei, the Gestapo, shut down the debate when people noticed that the medicos couldn't keep their stories straight. And lo and behold, even the Texas nationalist movement couldn't resist. The official account has a video of TNM head Dan Miller thanking Elon Musk for doing his movement the vital favor of showing that corruption at the federal level doesn't end. And he's not talking only about this issue, he's talking about all the Twitter files. Let me remind you, Twitter is the only platform thus far to ditch its medical misinformation policies. Oddly enough, one shut-up reply actually repeated the Virality Project's central premise, that true stories can constitute misinformation. Matt Taibbi corrected him on that point. This is the fifth reaction tweet that I have. Taibbi said that while one can blow a true story out of proportion, once you organize to suppress it, quote, "You're taking direct aim at informed consent, the free press, and a slew of other key principles," close quote. The user then deleted his tweet. And on Twitter, that is the ultimate expression of shame. And now my analysis. The Virality Project executive summary, in fact, accuses domestic actors of dusting off what it considered the same old arguments, which amount to this. Artificial active acquired immunity is not and never has been either A, as effective as natural immunity, or B, without side effect. The medical school curriculum, at least when I attended, included warnings that neither thing was necessarily true, or at least that side effects did occur. But these, my professors said, were rare and did not bear mentioning to a scared public. However, lawyers for the firm of Fulbright and Jaworski, yes, that Jaworski, took exception to the withholding of information in their Texas medical jurisprudence course. All that to illustrate that the debate on the utility of immunization is far from settled. True, the public reveres Saints Edward Jenner, Jonas Salk, and Albert Sabin, and Sir Gunnar Kasson, Knight Commander of the Most Honorable Order of Iditarod. But the debate continued until the present crisis, when a think tank presumed to tell the government to stop it. What's infinitely worse and absolutely inexcusable is that the government took that think tank suggestion to heart. Now, those four men I named arguably saved more lives than they took. One cannot say the same for Anthony S. Fauci, MD, or the unworthies at Pfizer Pharmaceuticals. And one certainly cannot say that of the Virality Project. Links to the description of the article, to the Virality Project home and final report download pages, to those testimonial pages from the Freeman Spogli Institute and the Rockefeller Foundation, to the thread, to the video introducing Renee DiResta as having worked for the CIA, to the 5 tweets in reaction, to my Declarations of Truth Twitter account, and to Conservative News and Views. I've also left links to the awesome CNAV Store and to ourcivilized.com, as I also mentioned. You know already about how to like a video, turn on notifications, and leave a tip. On the end screen, I'm going to leave a subscribe link to my channel and links to my Twitter Files playlist, to the video that I've already done about Twitter ditching its medical misinformation policy, and the Renee DiResta introductory video. This is Terry A. Hurlbut delivering another declaration of truth and reminding you to let the truth set you free.